Hi, we're going to have a look at doing the ceramics and looking at the problem on the 400 series Rayburn. I've come across a major issue with my old 460K, which is 22 years old, 21 years old, and unfortunately in the cooker section the side plate is very badly distorted. So as there's nothing on YouTube, I couldn't find any help for this at all. I've had to just trial and error it, and I thought this might be of some help to someone. So here we go, let's have a look. I'm going to hand the camera over to my wife and show you how to get to the main parts and sort of talk you through it as we go. So here we go, the 460K, great machine, it's been served us very well, and it's a boiler and cooker, as you all know, but hopefully all the 400 series are going to be very similar to this. So there we have the controls, and I've already made a big start on this because I didn't really think I was going to do a video, but I'll talk you through as far as I've got. So the first thing was to take the boiler out, 2 simple Phillips screws there to take that panel off, and the plinth comes off with 3 screws here, and then you've got full access to the boiler. Boiler's really simple to remove. You need to find the oil feed pipe to the boiler, which goes to the base of the pump. This braided pipe will be the clue. Just follow it along, and where it connects into the bottom of the pump, you've got a simple nut. I think it's about 15-16mm nut to undo. Remove the pipe. Obviously make sure your oil's turned off first. Please don't forget that, otherwise it will be going everywhere. But anyway, oil off, oil pipe out. Simple electrical connection comes from about here. Just follow the wire down, and that just unplugs. You've got to be very careful of this wiring loom here as when you're pulling out the boiler, and the only remaining thing is a simple 17mm nut here, and take that nut off, and then the whole boiler unit will slide out. Probably best to slide it out and then take this off, give you more access, because as you can see it's plenty long enough. Slide it all out, take that off, make sure your oil supply is off, and then the boiler's out.
You can show them when you put it back in.
Yeah. When come around here, as you see, you then have access to the holes where the blast tubes feed first your heating, and there on the right is the cooker blast tube access. So we'll be looking at that. So what we do next is, having done that, is pull out your hot plate. Rayburn give you these things, hopefully you've still got hold of them. Just hook them in. There's no need to pull that out, that's just a gas sensor port there, and it's quite a lift, so do be careful, and also when you're pulling it out, make sure you lift properly, because as I've done there, you can chip the enamel really easily. Unfortunately that's what I've done. So lift it up first before withdrawing it out. Put it to one side, not very light at all. Okay, then this gives you access to your cooker side here and your boiler side there. We'll sort that out. What you've got to do next is take the top off, and you pull that out, just lifts out, little access panel there, take that off. You can take the lids off, but it's not too heavy with the lids on, so I haven't bothered. There's a small stud in here that I took out. You won't be able to see it, but just feel for that. It's worth, you'll have to unscrew, it's a stud and a nut. got some. No, it's just a simple 8mm stud and a nut. So then what you need to do is pull out the 4 fixes here, and the way you do that is you have to turn these chrome caps to undo them. You can't lever them up because they're screwed into these collets here. So there's see that, and
It's anti-clockwise, yeah.
normal threads. You just really, they're quite tight. You might want to put some WD-40 on them, let them soak for a bit, but with rubber gloves on especially, get a bit more grip, and you could just about unscrew them. Mine have never been removed, but they were difficult but doable. And then I used a big screwdriver, and these came undone quite easily. One of the few things that did. So you've got the 4 of those, and now
Do you want me to
just
help?
check. No, it's okay. Once those 4 are out, that stud at the front's out. Hopefully, we should be okay. Just to carefully remove, and it's just a simple lift and straight out. Like so. I'll put that there for now. Okay. Now the next thing, this will be covered in insulation like this, and you need to pull all this off. There's a steel plate that goes on there with 4 Allen screws or screws. You've got to remove them, get that plate off. There's a thin ceramic insulation panel there as well. And what you need to do is pull out all of this all around this edge here, because inside here are the fixing bolts for this top cap, as I call it, and the cap ends here and here, so you don't need to disturb this side, but you do need all the fixings off to get this off. And this, especially this one here, you can feed these fixings here. I managed to push this through without damaging it to bring it out into one piece. So save all your insulation that comes off the top here, and now you've got to start taking away the bolts and everything. A lot of the fixings are these things: countersunk Allen stainless steel sort of bolts, and you can see them here. There's a few here. There's a mixture of bolts that hold this thing down, and these things. Unfortunately, these 2 here for me were murder, and they just couldn't. They screw down into the cast iron casting, and the iron has rusted over the years, over the 20 odd years, and there was no getting them out complete. So I had to drill the heads off. This one's still not done, and I spent an hour carefully drilling this out and re-threading it, ready to take a new bolt. This one, unfortunately, the drill snapped off in. I expect everyone would have trouble with them. They are properly rusted in. These are not too bad. You've got two in the front here where these little cutaways are. So those 2 working round those 2. You've got a few in here. You've got nuts and washers on the back. And in the back here you've got fairly obvious row of 2, 4, 5 additional ones, and 2 here. And the ones that caught me out because it still wasn't lifting the cap were these 2 in this panel. See them? Yeah. So once those are off, all the way round there, the cap should then come away. So we'll just take this off. And the reason this has to come off is because to work in the cooker side here it's impossible, because you've got to be able to get in here to replace the ceramics and repair the plate, and I'll show you what the problem was. So I'm just going to lift this away. This little chamber, this little plate here, it's not essential to remove that because it doesn't bolt down through. It's just an access panel for diagnostics of the gases. So I'm going to lift this off. There it goes. There's the underside. It's got ceramic panels and flue chambers as well. I'll just put this down. There we go. Right. Inside here, with all the ceramics which I've removed, was this plate here, and this is the problem. This panel, the bottom two bolts had rusted off or just burnt off, really. I think it just gets too hot, and once those two bottom bolts had given up the ghost, the rest of the panel had distorted and split to that degree there. So these two here, yeah, that one and that one, they'd given up the ghost. They're absolutely rusted into the cast iron plate behind it. These were all right. I managed to get all these out, but those two are goners. They've given up. And you can get a kit, which I've bought. It comes with a few of the insulation panels and a new plate, and it's 3mm thick stainless steel. But to me, my problem now is I've got nothing to secure those two bottom bolts in, and I've scratched my head, and I'm going to tell you how I propose to fix the problem, because it's £10,000 replacement this, and I'm sure a lot of people would say there's nothing that can be done. It's got to either be pulled out and completely rebuilt or scrap it, because if you can see inside the cooker chamber there at the bottom, if I put my hand in, down here there's a big crack in the cast iron side that goes down here, and the two bolts, you can just see that there's one of them that's burnt off and the other one's sheared off completely there. And really, with the access you have, there's no way to drill them out, because these bolts are all really hard, heat resistant. You've got let me just get a tape. You have a total of 7 inches or 180mm to work in, and it's very limited space. To drill out something like that size, retap it, it's really difficult, and I think it'd be all right with normal bolts, but with these hardened bolts, any drill is going to struggle, and you're going to end up snapping it and really making no progress for a lot of effort. This panel here is thin cast iron, and it's got some bosses for the bottom bolts, so you've got something to screw into. All the bolts have sort of cast in bosses, threaded bosses, to accept the bolts. Between the plate and the cast iron is a thin layer of insulation as well, and that comes in the kit with this panel. Now, in order to get this out, I had to remove all the ceramic panels inside there, insulation panels. It's a fairly straightforward job, but I would recommend, with all of this, photograph the hell out of it. Photograph what bolts, nuts went where when you remove this top cap, and take lots of photographs inside this chamber, so you know where the insulation panels are going to go, because it's got long panels that come down the side, but the bottom 6 or 8 inches of this chamber is a separate ceramic rectangular paneling. So do photograph it. I highly recommend it before you remove it. So you, and some of the panels have chamfers on, some of the panels have rebates on, and you need to get it absolutely spot on when you're putting it back in. And the main thing to be aware of, health and safety, not that there's a lot going on here, but that's what I wore, this mask, when removing this ceramic insulation, because it makes the most hideous dust that I would think would be as bad as asbestosis or whatever the diseases are. So I wore that. It's quite a good mask. It's used for spraying as well, just to try and cut it down. I also ran the Hoover, the vacuum cleaner. I've got like a Henry Hoover, stuck the nozzle in there to suck most of the dust away, and I ran the extractor as well, and I still found, despite all that, I found myself sneezing a bit. But yeah, just be aware that it is really nasty stuff. Make sure you just, it's doable, it doesn't take long, it just breaks away. Just feed a big screwdriver in behind it, it'll all drop away, no problem. But just look after yourself best you can. Okay, right, so it's been a few nights now, and as I tend to do, I strip things out, look at the problem and think, what am I going to do to fix it? I looked inside the ovens here. Oh, we could do with a torch. Let me just get my phone. Right, inside the ovens here are, oh, that's the panel when I'm cutting. I was looking for that. These rack panels, cast iron rack panels, they're very easily removed. There's another one of those chamfered bolts I told you about. Slacken the back one and remove the front one. Is there. That comes out, and just the same in the bottom oven. It's got a smaller one because you need access to this panel. And this is the thin cast iron panel I was telling you about with the threaded bosses.
Oh, can't see.
Sorry.
Right, there we go.
You see the threaded bosses there. Just point there and around that hold the plate in. All right. And underneath, though, there are none. You can see that. There are none. It's just a plain panel. Now the problem area, where the distortion is on the plate, is between the two ovens. You just pan back a bit. See my hand? The problem area is here, because the plate goes in like that and points. Got that?
Yeah.
Try and get it in focus. You see that? The access, the gases feed in between the two ovens and circulate around the top oven for the hot oven and a little bit around the bottom for a cooler oven down there. And there really is, there's a panel in the top oven here. The panel in the top oven there doesn't give you access to be able to repair the area where you need for the bottom bolts. So I've looked at it and I tried to think about taking this out, so you could get into this area here, but you would need to pull out this side because the floor of the oven runs under this side, and to get that out it's held in with about 9 screws of different, you've got straight cut screws, you've got these Allen chamfered things, and hideous big Phillips bolts as well. None of them would really shift for me, so I abandoned that idea of pulling that out and trying to get this floor out, because it was just going to end up shearing these bolts inside the casing, so I didn't want that. So to cut a long story short, I've moulded over, and what I'm going to do to fix the problem, because obviously the new plate needs securing at the base, because although these bolts, top bolts, will all go in okay, these two bottom ones are the most important, because the heat of the blast tubes comes right past here, and I need to secure the base. So what I'm going to do is use the old plate. I'm going to cut what I need off the top of the old plate and weld it, because it's still stainless steel, that's stainless, and do a weld and bring the bolts down, these bolt holes down, or maybe even drill some more until I can fix to the bottom, get them coming through the bottom oven into here, and I'll put a securing plate over the top of that cast iron and just simply bolt through the bottom of that extended plate to help secure it. The kit comes with a modification. When this was original, the gases just went into the box and they just did the thing, but the box got too hot, things were melting, the blast tubes melt for a pastime as well. But the modification is a slope that goes at the back of the box, the cooker box, and so the gases will flow up and come quickly further away from this area where it's all getting too hot, which eventually causes this distortion. When you put the bolts in, there's lots of warnings to say don't over tighten them, because they're only 6mm bolts, but you see the size of these holes. They obviously have concern that this has to expand and move if it wants to, and I think if it stops doing that, this is the sort of damage you end up getting. So bear that in mind. It's a fairly straightforward rebuild, I hope, because I obviously haven't done it yet, but if anyone thinks that, hopefully by cutting the nice undamaged bit off of this, welding onto that, drilling what holes I want so that it will come down below here and just bolt through into this bottom oven, hopefully that will be an adequate repair. I don't know whether I'm going to try and weld a nut on there. I've got welders, and so I'm going to try and remove that stud with welding. That one did just about drill out, but I would like to get another securing point back onto that. But that's one of my problems. And then I'm pretty much, when I've extended that plate, going for the rebuild. So I hope that might be useful for somebody. It'd be nice to save what is a very good cooker and boiler system, and I think for the effort and the work it's saving a 10 grand replacement in my case.
And so you can show them putting it back together again.
Well, I don't know about that. Anyway, hopefully that's useful for someone, and the idea of bringing those bolts down and coming up with a solution to secure the bottom of that panel. Obviously the ceramics may need a little bit of tweaking to accommodate the extended panel, but it's easy stuff to cut and adapt. All right, that's it. That's the end. Thank you very much.
Bye.